Here's a number I want you to sit with for exactly 10 seconds. $100,000. Say it out loud if you're somewhere private. Feel how it lands. For most people, that number sits somewhere between deeply motivating and completely unreachable, closer to the second one if we're being honest. But here's what changes everything about that number. $100,000 is not like other financial milestones. It doesn't behave the way you'd expect a savings goal to behave. It doesn't scale linearly. It doesn't reward you proportionally for effort. It rewards you disproportionately with something the first $99,000 doesn't give you, and that the second $100,000 comes dramatically faster because of. Here's what Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner and one of the most successful investors in American history, said about this exact milestone. The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you have to do it. He didn't say the first million. He didn't say the first $500,000. He said $100,000 because he understood that this specific number is where the math fundamentally changes. It's where your money stops being purely the product of your labor and starts becoming something that generates its own momentum. At $5,000 invested at a 10% annual return, you earn $500 in a year. Interesting, not life-changing. At $100,000 invested at the same return, you earn $10,000 in a year without working a single additional hour, without a promotion, without a side hustle. Just from the money that's already there, doing what money does when you give it time and direction. That's the threshold. That's why this number matters more than any other milestone in your wealth-building journey. And that's exactly what this video is about. Not the philosophy of saving, not the vague encouragement that financial media is full of, the specific, ordered, numbered strategies that get you there faster than the standard advice suggests is possible. My name is Daniel. Let's build the roadmap. Why the standard advice keeps people stuck. Before the strategies, we need to address something. Most financial content about saving money focuses on the wrong variables. It obsesses over coffee, avocado toast, and small daily expenses, while the people consuming that content are living in apartments consuming 45% of their income, driving cars on payment plans, and paying investment fees they don't know they're paying. The math doesn't work in your favor when you're optimizing for the small stuff while ignoring the large stuff. Cutting your daily coffee saves you $1,500 per year. Cutting your housing costs by 25% saves you $6,000 per year. One of these is worth 4 times the other and takes roughly the same mental energy to implement. This is not a video about small stuff. These are 9 specific strategies ordered by impact that address the variables that actually determine how fast the first $100,000 arrives. Strategy 1. Stop giving the government more than they're asking for. Taxes are almost certainly one of the 3 largest expenses in your life, alongside housing and transportation. And unlike housing and transportation, taxes have legal, government-sanctioned mechanisms specifically designed to reduce them, mechanisms that most people either don't know about or don't use correctly. The 401k and traditional IRA exist for one explicit purpose: to allow you to reduce your taxable income dollar for dollar in exchange for investing that money for retirement. This is not a loophole. This is not aggressive tax planning. This is the government literally offering you a discount on wealth building, and the majority of people are not taking full advantage of it. Here's what this looks like in concrete numbers. You earn $55,000 per year. You're in the 22% federal tax bracket. You contribute $10,000 to your 401k. Your taxable income drops to $45,000. The tax you owe drops by $2,200. You invested $10,000. The government effectively subsidized $2,200 of it. Your actual out-of-pocket cost for a $10,000 investment was $7,800. That's a 28% guaranteed return before the market produces a single dollar of growth. This is the most underutilized financial tool available to ordinary working Americans, and it's sitting right there waiting every single year for anyone willing to fill out the contribution form. Strategy 2. Collect the free money first. This strategy requires approximately 4 minutes to implement and produces one of the highest guaranteed returns available anywhere in personal finance. If your employer offers a 401k match, any match at all, and you are not contributing enough to capture every dollar of that match, you are declining part of your compensation. This is not a metaphor. This is literally turning down money your employer offered to pay you and choosing to leave it uncollected. The math is stark. Employer matches $50 for every dollar you contribute up to 6% of salary. You earn $52,000. Full match is worth $1,560 per year. That's $1,560 of your compensation that disappears if you contribute 0% instead of 6%. Invested over 30 years at a 7% average return, that $1,560 per year compounds to approximately $156,000. You walked away from $156,000 because you didn't update your contribution percentage. The employer match is the starting point, not because it's optional, but because it is the highest return, zero-risk financial move available to most working Americans, and it should be treated as non-negotiable. Do this today, before anything else. Log into your employer's benefits portal, find the 401k section, and set your contribution to whatever percentage captures the full match. This takes 4 minutes, and the financial consequence of not doing it is measured in 6 figures. Strategy 3. Create income whose only job is investing. Here's the framing that changes the way most people think about extra income. When additional income comes from a side project, freelance work, or any source outside your primary paycheck, and it goes directly into an investment account before it ever touches your checking account, it bypasses every competing demand that your regular paycheck faces. Your primary income covers rent, food, transportation, utilities, and life. That income is already spoken for the moment it arrives. Additional income from a separate source has no prior claims. It has no rent to pay, no groceries to buy, no subscriptions to cover. It can go directly, automatically, on the same day it arrives to your investment account, without competing with anything. This is not about working more hours at your current job. It's about identifying something you can monetize outside your regular working hours, a skill, a service, a piece of content, a small product, and mentally designating every dollar it generates as investment capital before it arrives. The psychological power of this approach is significant. People who try to save more from their regular paycheck fight an uphill battle against every existing habit and obligation that paycheck already serves. People who create a separate income stream for investing don't fight that battle. They route around it entirely. The amount matters less than the designation. $300 per month of side income routed directly to investments consistently for 10 years at a 7% return, that's $51,000 from money that was never part of your regular budget. Strategy 4. Never spend the dividend. This one requires restraint in exchange for compounding that most people never experience because they make the wrong choice at the critical moment. When your investments pay dividends, and if you hold broad index funds, they will, you will receive regular payments into your brokerage account. These payments are real money. They feel like income. They are tempting. Do not spend them. Here's the mathematical case for reinvesting every dividend payment without exception. Over the past century, the S&P 500 has returned approximately 10.7% annually when dividends are reinvested. The same index, with dividends taken as cash instead of reinvested, returns approximately 6.6% annually. That 4.1% gap sounds small? Over 30 years on a $100,000 portfolio, it's the difference between $2,100,000 and $700,000. The reinvested dividends produced 3 times the wealth. Every time a dividend hits your account, you are facing a fork in the road. One direction leads to consuming something that will be forgotten in weeks. The other direction leads to owning more shares that will pay more dividends that will buy more shares. A compounding cycle that builds quietly and relentlessly for every year you leave it running. The discipline here is not sophisticated. It's simply choosing the second fork every single time, automatically, by setting dividend reinvestment on in your brokerage account and never changing it. Strategy 5. Stop donating to investment companies. Investment fees are the most expensive thing most investors are paying that they have no idea they're paying. Here is how they work against you. An actively managed mutual fund charging 1% per year in fees versus a broad index fund charging 0.5%. The difference seems trivial. It is not trivial over time. On a $100,000 portfolio, growing at 8% annually, the fund charging 1% leaves you with approximately $660,000 after 30 years. The fund charging 0.5% leaves you with approximately $930,000. The difference is $270,000, paid not to you, paid to the fund company, in fees so small they never felt significant in any individual year. Here's the additional insult. The data on actively managed funds is unambiguous. After fees, approximately 85% of actively managed funds underperform their benchmark index over 15-year periods. You are frequently paying more money to get worse results. The solution requires no financial expertise. Buy broad, diversified, low-cost index funds, ideally those tracking the total U.S. market or the S&P 500. Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab all offer options with expense ratios below 0.5%. This single decision, made once, is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over a full investing lifetime. You are not choosing between good and bad investments. You are choosing between paying 1% and paying 0.5% for effectively identical exposure to the same underlying market. Choose the cheaper one every time. Strategy 6. The market is not a game you can win by playing more. There is an entire industry built on making you believe that success in investing comes from activity, from watching, analyzing, reacting, and repositioning based on the latest information. That industry profits from your activity. It does not profit from your patience. The data on market timing is not ambiguous or contested. It is among the most thoroughly documented findings in all of financial research. The average investor who tries to move in and out of the market based on conditions consistently and significantly underperforms the investor who simply buys and holds the same assets over the same period. Here is why the math makes this inevitable. If you miss the 10 single best days in the stock market over a 30-year investment period, your returns are cut roughly in half. And those 10 best days, the days with the largest single session gains, overwhelmingly cluster immediately after periods of maximum fear and maximum selling. They happen when the news is worst, when the prediction is bleakest, and when the maximum number of people trying to time the market have already moved to cash. The people who sold to avoid the bad days missed the recovery. The people who stayed through the bad days captured the recovery. This pattern has repeated itself with such consistency across every market cycle that predicting the next repetition is not a bold forecast, it is the base case. When you're building your first $100,000, your only job with the investments you've made is to leave them alone. Add to them consistently. Never remove them based on market conditions. Let time do what time does when you give it money and patience. Strategy 7. Own American business. All of it. Investment selection is where most beginning investors either overcomplicate the process to the point of paralysis or oversimplify it to the point of randomness. Here is the version that removes both problems. A broad index fund tracking the S&P 500 gives you proportional ownership in approximately 500 of the largest, most established, most profitable companies operating in the United States economy. When you buy one share of an S&P 500 index fund, you own a piece of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, Johnson & Johnson, and hundreds of others, across every sector, spread across the full breadth of American economic activity. You do not need to analyze earnings reports to own this. You do not need to forecast interest rate movements. You do not need to understand the geopolitical implications of the next Federal Reserve decision. You need to buy the fund and keep buying it. This is the strategy that Warren Buffett, the most successful investor in history, has publicly and repeatedly recommended for the majority of retail investors, including explicitly in his will, where he has instructed that 90% of the funds left for his wife be invested in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. If the greatest investor alive recommends this approach for people who aren't professional investors, the burden of proof is very high for any alternative. Most alternatives don't meet that burden. Strategy 8. Every raise is a fork in the road. Here is the decision that will determine your financial life more than almost anything else you ever choose. You get a raise. In your hand right now is additional income that you don't currently need for anything. Your life runs fine on your current income. The raise is genuinely new capacity. What happens next defines everything. Option 1. The lifestyle expands. The apartment gets nicer. The car gets newer. The restaurant spend goes up. The vacation gets more expensive. The additional income disappears into upgraded consumption. 6 months later, the new lifestyle is the normal lifestyle, and it requires every dollar of the new income to sustain it. The raise is gone. This is lifestyle inflation. It is the default. It happens automatically to people who don't interrupt it deliberately. And it is the primary reason people who earn significantly more at 40 than they did at 25 are not dramatically wealthier at 40 than they were at 25. Option 2. The savings rate rises. Half the raise goes to an automatic investment transfer, set up on the day the raise takes effect, before the new amount ever becomes the new normal. The lifestyle improves slightly because life is for living, but the wealth building accelerates with every income increase rather than staying flat. The person who implements option 2 consistently over a 20-year career across 4 or 5 meaningful income increases builds a fundamentally different financial life than the person who consistently chooses option 1, even if they earn identical incomes at every stage. Every raise is a fork. The road you take at each one compounds over decades in a direction you choose right now. Strategy 9. Your housing cost is the lever nobody talks about. This is the strategy that generates more financial improvement per dollar reduced than any other single line item in your budget. And it's the one that financial content almost never addresses directly because it's uncomfortable and it requires real decisions rather than small behavioral tweaks. Housing. The benchmark that financial planners use is 28 to 30% of gross income. This is the level at which housing costs are sustainable alongside saving, investing, and building toward financial goals. The average American household spends approximately 37% of gross income on housing. The difference between 30% and 37% of a $60,000 annual income is $4,200 per year. Invested for 20 years at 7%, that $4,200 per year becomes approximately $193,000. Here is what makes this the most powerful lever. It operates continuously. A one-time reduction in housing cost produces savings every single month for every month you maintain it. A $500 per month reduction is $6,000 per year, is $120,000 over 20 years in contributions alone, before investment growth. The practical applications vary by situation. A roommate in a 2-bedroom apartment. A move to a neighborhood that costs 15% less for comparable space. House hacking. Purchasing a small multi-unit property and renting out the units you don't occupy so tenants effectively pay your mortgage while you build equity. Geographic arbitrage, moving to a lower-cost city where your income goes dramatically further without a change in quality of life. Not every option works for every person, but the mathematical reality is unavoidable. No other single category in your budget has the leverage that housing has. Cutting coffee saves you $1,500 per year. Cutting housing costs by 20% saves you $4,000 to $8,000 per year, depending on your situation. If reaching the first $100,000 faster is genuinely the goal, this is the question worth sitting with. Is your current housing decision optimal for wealth building, or is it optimal for something else? What these 9 strategies have in common. Every strategy on this list operates on the same underlying principle. It removes friction from wealth building and adds friction to wealth consuming. Tax optimization makes investing cheaper. Employer matching makes investing immediately profitable. Designated side income makes investing automatic. Dividend reinvestment makes compounding unstoppable. Low fees keep more dollars compounding. Avoiding market timing keeps your money in the game. Index funds remove the cost of stock-picking errors. Resisting lifestyle inflation keeps the savings rate growing with income. Optimizing housing creates the single largest monthly surplus available. None of these require financial genius. None of them require exceptional income. None of them require sacrifice that makes life feel smaller. They require systems, set up once, running automatically, designed so that good financial outcomes don't depend on making the right choice in every individual moment. The first $100,000 is genuinely harder than the ones that follow. Not because the strategies are different, they aren't. Because the compounding hasn't had time to become visible yet. Because the returns on early contributions look small in absolute terms, even when they're significant in percentage terms. But the math doesn't care about how it feels in the early years. It only cares that you keep going. The people who reach $100,000 are not financial geniuses who picked the right stocks or timed the market perfectly. They are people who implemented systems like the ones we've just covered, consistently, across the years when nothing felt dramatic, and discovered that dramatic results were quietly accumulating anyway. Your first $100,000 is not a question of whether, it's a question of when, and when is determined by what you do this week. Now you know exactly what that is.